Namaste. Welcome to episode 5 of Vicharsthal, a show which is about taking inspiration from your ideation. It feels amazing that, I have reached episode 5 because it seems like just yesterday when I thought of, this concept and I wanted to do a chat show which went beyond just, a regular chat. And I'm really glad that all the episodes so far have been really well received. We got to learn a lot from the journeys of amazing women who have been doing great work in different fields. Now, today's episode is very special for me for more, reasons than one. In fact, it feels like coming full circle because, as you all know, Women's Web has been a huge part of my own journey. And if when I get to actually talk to the lady behind it, I think to me it's not just a huge honor, but also a very emotional moment because I remember that the first major recognition that I had received in the field of writing was at the Orange Flower Awards, which is, of course, which has been instituted by Women's Web. So I'm really excited for this talk today, and I'm sure you all are too. And we will definitely get to learn a lot from the journey of the super inspiring women who has graced the episode today. So let me get her on stream. Hi, Aparna, and thank you so much for joining me on the episode 5 of Vicharsthal. It is such an honor.
Hi, Anupma. Thank you so much for having me, and it was lovely to hear about your own journey with Women's Wear.
Yes. Yes. So let me introduce Aparna for all of you. So Aparna Vedapuri Singh is the founder and CEO of Women's Web, a leading digital platform that enables women to tell their own stories. Aparna graduated in journalism, English literature, and psychology from Mount Carmel College, Bangalore, and went on to do a postgraduate diploma in communications from the prestigious Mudra Institute of Communications, Ahmedabad. Since 2000, she has worked in marketing and business development at global organizations such as AC Nielsen, Simrise, and Frost & Sullivan. In 2010, Aparna decided to return to her first interest, the business of words, and started Women's Web, perceiving a need in the Indian market for an authentic platform that served all of women's interests. Since then, she has grown Women's Web to become an integral part of Indian women's daily consumption and a community that now boasts of over 10,000 high quality contributors. And yeah, I'm one of them, and reaches over 1 million users each month. Both mainstream and new media such as The Hindu, Your Story, Indian Express, etc. have covered Women's Web. Aparna has been featured in the Career Startup podcast on Asian entrepreneurs and interviewed on radio as well as television shows. Aparna is passionate about empowering women to chart their own destinies and support each other on their journeys. She has spoken at leading industry events such as Women Tech Makers, the Organization of Pharmaceutical Producers Annual Gala, and served as a mentor with the Google Launchpad and Zone Startups Accelerator programs. That's an amazingly inspiring profile, Aparna. So I'm sure, we are going to learn a lot from you today. So the topic of today's discussion, of course, is to understand how we can use the power of digital to empower and support women, because I think probably you're the best person to talk about it because of the amazing work that Women's Web has been doing in that space. But just to begin with, how did the idea of doing it come about? Because as I read in your profile, so you were doing something else, and then of course you changed gears. So what is it that triggered that?
Sure. So I was myself part of the early wave of blogging in India, and
Right.
I realized that the things that we as women were talking about online was very different from what conventional women's magazines thought women were or should be interested in, which is
Right.
usually
Right.
beauty, cookery, and celebrity. And I thought that while there may be a space for all those interests in women's lives are also much more than that. And we were
Right.
talking about a whole lot of things, way beyond celebrity, way beyond what is the latest handbag to acquire, and so on. So
Right.
I really started Women's Web thinking that we need a more holistic sort of approach where we enable women to talk about the good, bad, and ugly of their lives, and that includes everything that's happening to them, everything that they're doing. So really, to enable women to tell their own stories in a way that feels real to them. So that's just what I had in mind, and I didn't, to be honest, have a very clear vision of where this would go. But I did think that, okay, if I like this, and a lot of women like me are looking for something like this, women that I know, so surely more people will be looking out for something like this, and I just went ahead.
Right, right. That's wonderful, and we are really glad you thought of that. And of course, I also have been a part of the Women's Web community, and I have seen how over the years there are a lot of things that Women's Web has done. I mean, I would say that Women's Web is not just a portal, like though technically one may say that yes, it is a portal, but there are a lot of other things also that you've been doing. So if you could just talk a little bit about how actually Women's Web has used this digital medium to influence the lives of women. If you could just talk a little bit about the maybe the different initiatives you took up, or any other events maybe, or could be anything. So yeah, if you could just
Sure.
talk about that.
So, our core vision remains to enable women to tell their own stories, and in
Right.
that process, inspire, support, and be there for each other. Now, content is one way in which we can do that, and we
Yes.
started off with text content, but with the vision being the same, we've basically come up with other ways in which we reach the same objective. So that
Right.
means today, for instance, video-based storytelling is an important part of what we do. Events and workshops is an important part of what we do, and again, our events and workshops are all geared towards the same objective, which is very little faff, a lot of substance, and a lot of
Yes.
realism, which means people talking very, very honestly about things that have worked, not worked for them, things that they have done along their own journeys, which we can all learn from. So, in the process, we've also started, doing other things, like as this contributor community grew, we realized that this community is hungry for opportunities. So we started working with enterprises, because, and again, that happened very organically, because when organizations, and whether in the social sector, whether in technology, whether in any other space, when they saw the content that we are creating, they started
Right.
coming to us and saying, okay, can you curate this kind of interesting, engaging content for us, for our employees, or can you curate events for our employees? And at the same time, we saw that there is this community which is really eager for opportunities. So we started bringing the two together. So today, that's
Mm-hmm.
another part of our business, which is that we create engaging content and experiences for organizations,
Right.
and use our community to do that. So if you're part of our contributor community, for instance, from time to time you will see mailers from me saying that
Yes.
there are paid opportunities
Yes.
coming up, and you
Yes.
you know you can apply for those. So, like, our contributors come from all parts of the world, Indians in all part of the world, mostly women, but also increasingly we have people who are people who identify as non-binary or as gender
Yes.
queer. So we
Yes.
are increasingly also looking at really broadening, who gets to talk on the platform and share their experiences, and being a welcoming space for more and more people. And of course, we've always also had a small number of men who are allies to women, who want to be part of supporting women. So what we started doing is, then we work with organizations and we roll out opportunities for our contributors, saying that, okay, so let's say if you're a banker, then maybe you could write for one of our financial sector customers, or if you're a ex techie or you're a current techie, then maybe you could write for some of our tech customers. So these are
Right.
some of the ways in which we have broadened what we do with the community. Where yes, we are a media platform that continues to be the most visible part of our work, but behind that, which is maybe not always very obvious when you come to the platform, but when you do become a contributor, you start realizing that there are multiple other ways in which we engage with both the creator community and the audience as a whole, which gets to attend events, listen to very engaging conversations, all of that.
Right, right. That's pretty interesting, and I think also probably the digital space gives more accessibility also, because I believe some women sometimes they probably cannot venture out, like or of homes due to maybe some constraints. So I think what you're doing is really wonderful, because it gives that kind of accessibility. There's also the I mean, one can, like, you don't need to, in fact I like the concept of even anonymous posts that you have on Women's Web, so that way everybody gets a voice as well. So yeah,
Right.
that's wonderful.
Right. Yeah, and then
Right.
in fact, we recently had our Women in Corporate Allies event, which is meant for
Yes.
women who
Yes.
are currently working, and of course you spoke at the event as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
And it was very interesting, because it was an entirely virtual conference.
Right.
Our speakers as well as attendees came from a very, very wide range of geographies. Like we
Right.
had a speaker
Right.
speaking from Hindupur, we had attendees coming from places like Bhuj in Gujarat, and Bareilly in Uttar Pradesh, and all kinds of places like that, which would never be possible if it was a purely live event, which one can only do in a city like a
Correct.
Mumbai or a Bangalore or a Delhi,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
I do feel like increasingly, a hybrid model where we're able to engage people in multiple ways is going to be the way forward.
Right, right. I completely agree with that. And we have a few people who've joined and who say hello. So Sandhya, Anjali, Amisha, Aarti, Lakshmi ma'am, Shikha, all of them say hello to you. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining. And I would like to tell
Thanks,
the audience
folks.
that if you have any questions for Aparna or even any comments for what we're talking about, please feel free to share. And as and when we get time during the discussion, I'll take up your questions, as well as if you have any comment or even an experience to share, please do share. Because I'm sure a lot of you also write with Women's Web. You've been associated. So, yeah, if you would love to share about your experience, please do that. So, Aparna, I always think that, whenever somebody is involved in work like this, I'm sure you must be getting a lot of feedback also, right? Like, because you've influenced the lives of so many women in the past. I think we had some network issue there. Really sorry about that. Are we okay now? Yeah, Aparna, you
You
can
were
hear
talking
me?
about feedback.
Yes, yes, there was some network issue in between. Sorry. So I was just wanting to know that because there are different ways in which, like you've influenced the lives of women, uh, in the form of, say, having writers, of course, like giving voice to them. Then, of course, the events and other workshops that you do, or, all of that you spoke about. So, do you remember has there ever been, like, feedback which has somewhat stayed with you, or maybe someone saying something to you that, thank you for doing this for me? So if you could just share some of these feedbacks, and how they touched you and how they actually keep you going, in a journey like this.
Yeah, I mean, so not just me, but the whole team, we love hearing feedback of how our stories have impacted both contributors and our readers. And in fact, every other day we hear from readers. So the other day, I'll just tell you a very a small and funny sort of anecdote. So a couple of days ago, we had run the story about four women who had chosen to shave their hair, and why they did it,
Yes,
and
I read that. Yeah.
how that sort of impacted on how they felt about themselves as women, how others saw them. So I noticed a comment, when this story had gone up on our Instagram handle. I noticed a comment by somebody else saying, "Hey, I was going to just write about this experience on Women's Web. How did you read my mind?" You know. So and this is on a very sort of light-hearted note, but we've also had
Right,
very similar
right.
comments come up on issues as serious as domestic abuse or sexual harassment. So one of the common threads that comes up again and again, where readers tell one another or readers tell authors, "How did you read my mind?" And which really goes back to one of the earliest things we thought about when we were thinking about who are we to our readers, what is it that we really offer them. When we were thinking about this
Right.
some years ago, one of the things that we really thought about is, in some way or the other, at some time in her life or the other, almost every woman feels alone. And this is despite the fact that the problems or challenges that many of us face are actually not unique. Whether it is balancing a career with
Right.
motherhood, whether it is sexual harassment at the workplace, whether it is the intersection of gender and caste, whether it is occupying public spaces as a woman, whatever
Hmm.
it is, whether it is making your way up and finding a glass ceiling at the workplace, whatever it is, to be honest, none of these problems are unique to any woman. But nonetheless, we all feel
Right.
as if either it's me who is facing this problem, or worse, me who is causing this problem, because we're also gaslit all the time, right? So We often think that perhaps I'm
Yes. Yes.
overreacting, perhaps I'm, causing the problem in some way. Maybe if I were more accommodating, I were more polite in how I said something, this problem would not occur to me. So, one of the very important things I feel our stories do is make women feel that you're not alone in this, no matter what issue it is that
Right.
you're facing. And again, like I said, I don't mean only serious issues or, very, very critical issues. It can be something as simple as, how the daily commute tires me out. It could be something as
Yes.
simple as
Yes.
that. Or it could also be a moment of joy that, so recently we had a very interesting story, for instance, on how I negotiated and asked for a raise at my workplace and got it. Or it could be
Wow.
something very heartwarming, like, this is my grandmother's recipe and how I recreated it. So it's not that, being together or sharing a moment of togetherness or the feeling of togetherness is only about difficulties in life. That's definitely one very important part of it, but it's also about, sharing your joys, and again feeling that the small joys are worth celebrating. So that's why we say that across the
Right.
spectrum of good, bad, and ugly, you're not alone.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And so I think, in fact, the people who are watching also agree. So Aarti Khatwani Bhatia, she says that is so
Thank
truly
you,
put. I think
Aarti.
she's talking about the point about, feeling that we
Right.
are not alone, whatever it be, like you said, it could be even the smallest of things. So yes, definitely that is an empowering feeling, like she says. And I agree. And I think it even happens, like, I remember when I wrote an article on breastfeeding, say, for Women's Web. So I remember
Right.
there were even women who relate, there'll be people who will be like, oh, yes, I go through the same thing, or, I get to. So it could be just any aspect, I think, of a women's life. There's always somebody who just feels that, yes,
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm not alone. And yes, there's somebody else. So that is so true.
Right.
Right. Okay. So now I have always been very curious about this one thing, that Women's Web is an open platform. And of
Yes.
course, so you give a voice to different perspectives because of that, because it is like, because I've seen a lot of times that, say, there's an article giving a certain viewpoint, and when there is somebody who has a different viewpoint, you always welcome that. You say that, yes, feel free to share your thoughts, and we would publish it. And I have always wondered that it must be quite difficult, I think, to, because I'm sure there is a stand you might have on a certain issue, but at the same time, of course, you want to give that kind of voice to everybody and be fair. So how do you really balance that? And is there a thought put behind that decision, that okay, this content is okay to go, even though I may not agree with, but yeah, this is probably somewhere compromising on the ethos of Women's Web. So how do you really take that
Right.
decision? What is the driving factor behind that?
Right. So you're very right. We don't insist that only a certain point of view is the only or valid point of view. But having said that, we do have certain guidelines on what points of view will not be welcome at Women's Web. And
Okay.
I
Okay.
firmly believe that one cannot abdicate responsibility by saying that all points of view are equally welcome. So, for
Right.
example, hate
Right.
speech will never be welcome on Women's Web.
Right.
So if you're going to come and denigrate a particular community, caste, religion, gender, region, that will not be welcome in the name of a valid point of view. All points of view are not equally valid. If you are being stereotypical or offensive about a particular community, and that can be any community on any basis, right? Like, we don't believe in that. But apart from that, we do welcome most points of view. And so what we have done in order to see, this is always going to be a little subjective, but what we have done in order to help reduce
Right.
the subjectivity is to introduce certain guidelines for our
Mm-hmm.
contributors. So whereby, for instance, posts that are offensive about a particular category of people would not be
Hmm.
welcome.
Hmm.
Posts which are
Yes.
judgmental of women's choices, and this doesn't mean, again, this is one of the things we say in our guidelines, that this doesn't mean that you cannot examine certain choices, but you have to do it in a respectful way. So, for example,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
you could
Hmm.
have a post which examines why it is, a good idea for a woman to have her financial independence. But
Hmm.
and we
Hmm.
will be fine with that, but we would not run a post which says, homemakers don't earn, so they don't have value or they are down.
Yes, right, right, right.
So there's
Yes,
a subtle difference,
yes,
between talking about why women need financial independence and denigrating the women who are currently not financially independent, right? So
agree,
we will not
agree.
allow that. So we have certain guidelines like that, and in sensitive cases, like cases which are sub judice, or cases where the facts on the case are not yet very clear, we may reserve the right to not accept certain posts, or sometimes for legal reasons, like for instance if a court verdict is awaited and something could be
Yes,
treated as um,
yes,
prejudging a court's verdict. So certain things are there from the legal perspective, but yes, so what we've done is, as such, we've developed a set of guidelines to help editors navigate these, so that again it's not just only about me, right? There's a team of
yes,
editors, and even within
yes,
that team we may have
yes.
very different points of view. I may agree on something, somebody else has a completely
I'm
different
sure.
point of
Yeah,
view.
yeah,
So how
yeah.
do we ensure that it's not about what I like, or editor A likes, or editor B likes, right? So this common set of guidelines is a way for us to navigate that. And those guidelines are also available for all our contributors to see on the dashboard.
Right. That's
So we
wonderful.
are,
And
we
I
are
think
quite
that
transparent
transparency is
about it.
wonderful. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Great, great, great. So, in fact, so Sandhya has shared a lovely comment. Sandhya says, I'll vouch for Aparna being a boss
Oh
that
my
the
God,
team
I'm
loves,
embarrassed
a
now.
very patient teacher and a caring friend. Have learned so much from her. And I am sure, like, even though I've not been a part of the core team, I'm pretty sure what she's saying is absolutely
Oh my
right.
God. Sandhya is embarrassing me now. Thank you, Sandhya.
Okay, and I'll probably just show a couple of more comments. So Piyusha says two of my favorite superstars in one conversation, and what wonderful stories. Thank you, Piyusha. That's so
Thank you,
kind of you.
Piyusha.
Yeah, and Anjali does a +1 to that. So thank you, Anjali.
Thank you, Anjali.
Nice. So I think, yeah, we've been having a pretty interesting conversation. So, I now want to come to, our favorite topic of all writers or anybody who's on the web, the trolling, the online trolling, because, we all are subjected to it at some point. Actually, I have seen a lot of times, that there are two kinds of people, like, I mean, at least in my experience. One are those mindless trolls who probably don't even read, and they just want to kind of say something negative. But then there is a section who are not, like, probably coming with malice, but they genuinely have a very different view, and then they probably are not trying to understand, and I see that, okay, then there's some rigidity, and out of that probably. So I sometimes feel that this section, sometimes it's probably good to engage with, sometimes I feel that engaging with people can sometimes help to give them a different perspective. So now Women's Web, of course, I know, because you are a platform that takes a certain stand, and I'm sure that you do experience trolling on different kinds of posts. So how do you, as a platform, I mean, I'm not talking about the individual here, but more like, as a platform, like, what is your stand, that whether you need to ignore or do you choose to respond to some? How do you take these comments? If you could
Sure,
just share that.
sure. So one thing is, whatever I say here should not be taken as a prescription for somebody else.
Yes,
I
of
don't
course.
believe that there is any one way to deal with trolls.
Right, right.
But I'll share what we do as a platform. So, like you very rightly said, there are trolls and there are differences of opinion, which can sometimes
Yes,
be also expressed harshly.
yes, yes.
So when it comes to trolls, I've always been very clear that as a leader, as a founder, my first responsibility is to my team members. And of course, that includes the contributors who are writing with us as an extension of the team,
Yes,
even though they may not be core team members. And the core team members, particularly the social media team who has to handle the social media engagement. So we are always very clear that our first responsibility is to their mental wellness. So from that perspective, we do not encourage engagement with trolls. And here I'm talking about downright trolls who are coming
yes.
there abusing you,
Right, right,
all of that. We just do not engage with them.
correct.
Because if you're not coming here with goodwill, if you're not really coming here to have a genuine conversation, I don't really see why our team should waste their precious mental bandwidth and health on engaging with you. So
Yeah.
there, very clearly, we do not engage. We reserve the right to ban anybody who comes and trolls us, and or ban, block, whatever you call it. We will not engage. Now the second kind of comments. Sometimes, yes, there are posts that receive very harsh comments, negative comments, especially if something is in the limelight. People disagree with the writer's POV. Now, so long as the disagreement is expressed in a what do you say, a civil manner, even if it is
Hmm.
strident. There is a
Hmm.
difference between being strident and being abusive.
Right.
As long as
Right.
the disagreement is not expressed in an abusive manner, we will let those comments stand. We leave it to individual contributors how much they want to engage, because at the end of the day, I strongly believe that everybody has their own bandwidth. Maybe certain contributors would like to engage with those comments. They would like to, again, share their point of view in terms of why they have written something the way they have written it. We as a platform will keep reminding people to keep the dialogue civil and
Hmm.
keep an eye as to whether it is
Right.
getting out of hand at any point where it is going beyond the bounds of civility and getting basically personally attacking either us or the contributor, in which case we will shut down the comment.
Right. Right. Right.
That's kind of been our stand. It has worked for
Hmm.
us. Like I said, may or may not be the right way for everybody, and I would not, dictate to anybody how they should
Yes.
deal with
Yes.
trolls. But it's always a question you have to ask yourself. What is the other things that are going on in your life, and how much bandwidth do you have? I like to believe that most content stands for itself if you take the trouble to read it with an open mind. You may disagree with it. That is fine. We cannot say that everybody has to agree with a given piece of writing. But yes, I mean, if you're going to come and be abusive, we will shut you out.
Okay, okay. I think that's a pretty,
Yeah.
like I think logical way of going about it. I actually like, your approach towards trolling. And though you did, of course, say that it is not something you would, say that would work for everybody. But I do think that, probably we can take some inspiration from that too, like, how we can handle the trolls. So that was wonderful to know, Aparna. So now, of course, women's web has been doing a lot of things, and you, like I said, you've been influencing so many lives, and there's so much content out there. You run such a huge platform. Like today there's so many contributors and so many readers all over. Do you really think that digital has the power to bring that change? I mean, do you think that sometimes reading a certain content can trigger a thought process in a person? Like I have, of course, experienced that it happens. In fact, it happened for my article which I wrote on the myths of feminism, which again, it does get shared again and again and again, and people, of course, have appreciated it. So I do remember that once there was this person who told me that yes, I did look at feminism from a different perspective, after reading that, and I was like totally taken aback. But yeah, what I want to know your, because you look at things at a very, like, broad level. So yeah, what is your take on this, that is it possible to make that difference?
So, I keep asking myself that question, and, I've been thinking deeply about some of these issues. And I know that it's, something that the team as well thinks about, especially when you see sometimes a climate of violence, or
Yes.
you see a climate of, hatred or abusive messages, or, hate towards feminism, or,
Right.
it is easy to get disheartened when you
Yes, of
see
course.
violence against women and girls in the light of what's playing out today in the country. It is very easy to think that what is the use of all this,
Right.
right?
Exactly. Exactly.
But I personally believe that every form of action has its place. So there is a huge place for feet on the ground. There is a huge place for activism for legal change,
Hmm.
and there is a big place for digital storytelling. And unfortunately, I'm just unable to remember the name of the person who said this, but I had also shared it with my team a couple of weeks ago. A very, very powerful interview with a spiritual figure that I was listening to, a theologian, in fact, and she said, talking about the work of change and how long it can take. I'm just struggling to remember the name, unfortunately. If I find it later, I'll put it in the comments for your viewers
Yeah,
to
right, right.
catch the episode later if they'd like to. One of the things that she spoke about was, this is my work to do. And I'm
Hmm.
not, and this is a woman in her 60s or 70s, and she said, this is my work to do, and I'm not going to be here to see it, and that's okay,
Right.
right? So I'm not. I call myself a realistic. I don't believe that in most cases change happens overnight. What can seem like overnight change is actually often the result of tiny ripples that have happened over a very long time. So when I think of the long arc of history, in that sense, I do believe digital storytelling has a very very powerful role. Will it bring about overnight change? Maybe not.
Mhm, mm. Okay, so I think that's a very valid point, and I guess I love that line actually. I mean, yeah, whenever you remember later, please do share. I would love to,
I will. I will.
watch. That's very inspiring, and I think all of us, whoever has this dilemma, I guess if we keep that in mind, it will just help us to keep at it. I think that's a lovely thought. And again, I would probably share a couple of comments. So. Vijay Lakshmi Harish says Women's Web does care a lot about the safety and mental health of its contributors. So thank you, Aparna, for creating that supportive space.
Thanks, CJ.
And there is one more from Mansi Sharma Mittal. She says that's a takeaway, not to ruin your mental peace. Thanks for sharing. Yes, so I think we've got a lot of, and wait, there's one more. I'll probably just show one more comment. So, Anupama Jain says when the conversations are constant, eventually wheels of change will roll.
Right.
Yeah, so basically, yeah, she was talking about the same thing that, we just
I
need
mean,
to
it
keep at
can
it
get
constantly.
fatiguing. I'm not saying it doesn't.
Of course, I'm sure we all, I think, face that fatigue. Um, and but I think the good thing is we have this community also to fall back on at when you're like probably exhausted, tired, or probably even frustrated with the way things are happening. I just feel that this community that we've created, it's so good to have the support of each other during such times. So that's really wonderful. And yeah, Anjali says, wow, thanks for sharing that powerful thought, Aparna. I may not be here to see the change, but yet I will keep treading the path. Yes, absolutely. So there was a question before the session, actually, from one
Okay.
of my page followers. So probably I'll just, I thought this may be a good point to bring that up. So
Sure.
she had a question about whether Women's Web is also planning something on the lines of like something more in the mentoring space, in the sense, like, say, for example, there are newer writers, maybe, the newer contributors, and if they need some kind of guidance, so maybe having a mentorship program for that, or on other aspects of where women may need some kind of guidance. So I do know that Women's Web has done work in that space, but yeah, I think what she meant to ask was, do you plan to do something more in that particular mentoring space?
Right. We haven't, so we have, like you rightly said, we have organized mentoring programs, especially as adjuncts to our events. Last year, I think we had one for some of the writers where we brought in, well-known writers like Sudha Menon and Soumya Rajendran to actually act as mentors on specific
Okay.
aspects of writing.
Yes. Yes.
We're definitely looking at doing it in a more sustained manner. Of course, the challenge is always that we want to do a whole lot of things and we have to find the bandwidth to do it. We have a very good internship program, and many of our interns have actually gone on to, work at other publications, work in, different spaces.
Okay.
So
Lovely.
we have a very solid internship program. We are looking to maybe, build that going further into a more sustained mentoring program for writers. We'll have to see what shape it takes.
Right. Yeah, that's great. And I also like the concept of breaking barriers, though it is not exactly in the mentoring space, but I do
Yes.
feel that, like you get to learn a lot there, because the kind of
Yes.
topics, you have during the panel discussions. I mean, at least I felt I benefited a lot from, those discussions in different areas of, where women may need some kind of guidance. So yeah, I think probably, yeah, but this sounds like a good idea, the
Yes.
sustained mentorship program. Yeah, so good. So what else is, like, in, because I know you mentioned at the beginning, when we started the conversation, that I mean, you didn't have like a very, a clear vision. I mean, of course, there was some kind of an ethos with which you started Women's Web, but do you think now you have some more specific goals in mind with respect to, the future of
Absolutely.
women's web? What are the things you want to do? And if you could share some of those.
Absolutely. So now, of course, we are a much larger platform with a
Yes,
business as well.
yes.
So, a lot of things going on. So, we certainly have, our vision to enable women to tell their own stories and be there for each other. That will, keep growing. What we really would like to do is, this 10,000 contributors who are currently there on the
Hmm.
platform and sharing their stories, we would like to really grow that number to say 100,000 and
Of
across
course. Wow.
languages. So today our Hindi platform, for instance, is almost as large as our English platform, and Tamil is taking off in a small way. So we would like to be
Wow.
present in more languages and basically enable people across languages, including from much smaller towns of India, to also share their stories. And we're seeing that happen a lot with our Hindi platform, for instance. That we're getting women who are coming in from smaller and smaller cities, and they have some very very interesting stories to share. So that is
Great.
definitely one, to widen the base of women who get to share their stories on Women's Wear. Of course, there is also a vision to keep providing this contributor community with more and more support, mentoring opportunities, all of those things. Yeah, I guess these are some of the things that we have in mind. And
Wow.
yes,
Great.
in
Sounds
terms of
exciting.
formats, video
Yeah.
storytelling is something that is growing for
Yes.
us.
Yes.
Again,
Yes.
we're seeing how to include our contributors in that. That is something that is in the process of being worked out. We have, some interesting series going on there. Like we do one, for instance, with columnist Pooja Priyamvada, where she speaks about
Yes.
various, aspects of importance to women, like women and mental health, domestic violence, gaslighting, essentially around the mental health and
Hmm.
related areas. So we're looking at doing more of those with different contributors in the video,
Okay.
format.
Okay.
So
That's
yeah,
lovely. So I think the
interesting
people who are
times.
watching, please do write for Women's Web if you aren't already. And I think the good thing is, now that you can write in multiple languages, because I do know that sometimes a lot of writers say that they are more comfortable in Hindi, but not as much in English. And it's really good to know that even Hindi has such a wide readership. So I think, yeah, that's great. So please do write in the language that you're comfortable in. And trust me, I think it is so empowering, to have that kind of space to just express your thoughts. It's really wonderful. And there's a question from Anupama. I'll probably just take it up before we wrap up. So, yeah, she's asking, do you see any difference in the problems shared from the remote areas to cities as far as women are concerned? Because, of course, you do get a sense of what are the
Right.
different challenges that women face. So, if you could throw some light on this.
Sure. Yeah, interestingly, I would not say that they are fundamentally different. So I think sometimes we have perhaps an impression that women in urban India, we like to think that we are living in a post-feminist age and women in
Yes.
urban India have it
Right.
all, but that's not really true. Especially when it comes to challenges around relationships, marriage, and in-laws, for
Right.
instance, the
Right.
problems are startlingly similar. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there is more
That's
superficial
true.
autonomy in the urban,
Yes. Yes.
environment. Yes, certain things like the challenges of women at work when it comes to metropolitan India
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
and in smaller town India are different, because the workplace in the larger cities often tends to be more corporatized, at least as far as most of our contributors are concerned, whereas
Right.
most women in smaller town India may still be either self-employed, or a part-time employed, or they are typically academicians, or doctors or lawyers, or so in that sense they
Right.
often tend to be in slightly different kinds of professions, or they are more often homemakers. So in that sense, from the perspective, they are more often, we see that they are reaching out for opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
which may not yet be available in the cities that they live in. So they're really looking out for things that they can do from home, or things that they can do virtually, jobs that are available for them virtually, which I'm hoping that this pandemic has shown us that a lot of jobs can be done virtually,
Right,
and
right.
open up those opportunities for women. So in that sense, yes, some of the issues for women from smaller cities are a little different, but I would not say that they are so fundamentally different.
Okay. Okay. So fundamentally, of course, there is, I think, the challenges are at the core same, but yeah, I think that makes sense. And Anshu shares a comment that I haven't in a while, but this video inspires me to write one soon. So yes, Anshu, we are looking
That's
forward
great,
to that blog
Anshu.
from
I
you.
hope to hear from you.
Yes. Okay, so that was a wonderful conversation, Aparna. Got so many insights from you. But before we close, I want you to share some very simple and practical points about what are the things that we can do in our the day to day lives, because of course we are all working for the same cause, to get for equality, and to give women a better quality of life. And for I think for me, I think it empowerment is so much about understanding, because a lot of times we say that, okay, somebody's at home, that's a choice, but I think we have to see things contextually, right? So I think empowerment is about also being aware that what are your rights, and then of course, so we are all ultimately working towards the same thing. So what do you think are the few things that we all can do on a regular basis to ensure that we keep this fight going and we reach where we want to reach? So it could be even something as simple as probably talking to our kids about it, because I personally feel, yes, even that is a huge aspect of making this happen, that how we talk to the next generation about it. So yeah, what are your views, like just a few practical things which you think we should be doing?
Right. So I think at a very practical level, how you engage with women in the world around you in your own immediate universe.
Right.
So, for instance, most of us, at least in the kind of segment of society that we are talking about in India, most of us employ domestic workers.
Right.
So, very simple starting point could be that how do we treat them? And
Yes.
when we
Yes.
talk about
Very good point.
empowerment, we love to think about ourselves and our rights, but are we fair employers? Do we pay a good living
Very
wage? To
good
me,
point.
that's a
Yes.
good starting
True.
point. Does your domestic worker have paid leave? So I really feel that if you're going to talk about women empowerment, you have to start with your own life.
Right.
And it doesn't always mean standing up to somebody who is trying to oppress you. Maybe that's not what's happening in your life. But are you being fair? If you're calling yourself a feminist, are you being fair to other women in your life?
Right.
That would be a very simple sort of thing to check yourself on. The other thing is, again, if you're a boss, and this is something that I grapple with constantly, because we live in a world which is geared towards very hard metrics, whether it's
Yes.
money or
Yes.
page views or
Right.
whatever it is.
Right.
We all have hard goals that we are working towards, right? But still, can you be a leader with compassion? Because this is something, and I I cannot say that I have worked the answers out. Every day I tell myself to be kinder. Every day I lose it on something. But I am trying. And
Yeah.
and the reason I'm talking about this in the context of women and empowerment is that we are all socialized to fit into very masculinized workplaces, which favor certain kinds of
Correct.
leadership, which is the aggressive leadership, which tells people to do things. So it's not, I mean, because I run my own team, I perhaps have the luxury a little bit of thinking of what kind of leader I want to be. If you work in a large corporate, or in an environment which doesn't which favors a very aggressive style of leadership, that may be difficult for you.
Yes.
But what are the ways in which we can bring traditionally what was seen as feminine values, which is empathy, listening, compassion, collaboration. And I believe
Right.
this is going to be the workplace of the future, right? Because
Yes. Yes.
I mean, the robots are
Absolutely.
going to take over a lot of the things that we all could do, but the things that the robots cannot take over from us are really
Right.
the
Right.
compassion, the empathy, the decision making with all of these variables, and yet
Right.
being able to move towards your goals. So um, I'm just talking about this, because this is something that I'm thinking about in my day to day life as
Yes,
somebody who
and it
thinks
is
that
very
way.
important. Yes, I agree completely. Yep. 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 I think we all
So maybe
need
you
to
could think,
do.
if you are a leader, you could think about, what kind of a leader you are.
Right. 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 Absolutely. And so Soumya says such a wonderful opportunity to see two inspiring women interacting with
Thank you,
each other.
Soumya.
Thank you so much, Soumya. So, it has been such an enriching and inspiring conversation, Aparna. And you, of course, have been an inspiration for most of us, not just me, but I think most of who are watching you today are associated with Women's Web in some way or the other. So, I wish you all the best. And I just hope Women's Web keeps rising, from strength to strength. And thank you for what you do for all of us.
Thank you, Anupama. Thank you so much for having me. It was a very fun conversation, and I
Yeah.
hope I've been able to, throw some light on women and digital. I'm not,
Yes.
we've spoken about a lot of things, but it's been very interesting talking to you because I think we've been able to look very candidly at some of the things which are really about not just about empowering other women, but who we are as women, right? Because
Yes,
I do
I
believe
agree.
it starts with each individual.
True,
So
completely agree, completely. And I think with that perspective, that's such a lovely note to actually end this conversation with. And I would also like to thank the audience who joined us today. Thank you so much for being there, for engaging with your comments. And I'll be back next week with episode 6 of Vicharsthal, which is going to be on the topic of mental health because Saturday is World Mental Health Day. And I'll be in conversation with the psychologist, Dr. Rajeshwari. She's one of the most renowned psychologists here in Hyderabad. And I'm sure we will get to learn a lot on that because I think of late we've been talking so much, about the topic of mental health. It is very important for us to understand it, for what it is. So thank you and bye, Aparna.
thanks, Anupma. Bye bye.